Hello and welcome to another episode of You Underestimate My Podcast. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Kenobi.
And how's it going today?
It's been going awesome. Lately, I've been playing God of War. I'm loving it so far. Might be one of my favorite games. Who knows?
Oh, cool.
And I also just watched the Men in Black trilogy for the second time, which was a decent time. How about you?
I'm fine. I've been playing The Last of Us Part 2. Almost there, I think. Almost done with it. Yeah. So today it's probably going to be a shorter episode. We're going to be talking about Spider-Man Miles Morales, the video game, from 2020, I think. I think it was specifically a PlayStation 5 game, kind of to test out the PlayStation 5's ability when it came out. I don't really know, but yeah, I mean, I played this a few weeks ago, so I kind of remember it. But what do you think of it?
Ooh, I haven't played it for over a year, I think. But I remember talking about it with a friend, and I loved the first Spider-Man game. It was my favorite game until Spider-Man 2, and then until The Last of Us. But I remember it being fun. It was really slow, or not really slow. It was just so short. It's like,
It's 8 hours, I think.
yeah, so the game's really short, which I prefer shorter games, but this one, I wanted it to be longer. These Spider-Man games, I just get invested in the story and just want to play it for the story. I don't get bored of the combat. Just the missions and seeing the story progress in front of my eyes is just my. This is why the reason I play video games is for the story, for the experience of losing and losing and losing again, and then finally beating it and yelling like, "Yeah, I did it!" Like screaming. I might post some of my God of War clips on YouTube, and you'll see what I mean by my screaming and
Wait,
hoorays.
but I thought you didn't like Rise of the Ronin because it was too hard and you had to keep
Oh, okay.
fighting bosses over and over again.
Well, Rise of the Ronin is a different story just because I didn't connect with the story. I wasn't fully invested, and so it felt like I was just fighting these bosses for no reason, and so it got difficult, and then I decided not to play it. But for God of War, it's not as difficult as I thought it would be, but it's still very difficult, and I like the story, and I'm paying attention with the story, so I'm liking the challenge of it more.
Cool.
So with Miles, it's it's the same as Spider-Man, except this one I felt it should be a DLC. That's what people are saying. It's basically the DLC game. It's basically Spider-Man 1.5. It's
Hmm.
You basically play it to play the second game, to understand the second game and what happened in that one.
Hmm. I I don't really agree. I think, first of all, I enjoyed the game. I don't know if I liked it more than the first game, but I thought it was fun. I didn't really uh necessarily want to play it that much, but we didn't have anything to do in August for the podcast, so we needed a short video game that we both knew, so we could do that. So we chose this one, and I was like, I was okay with that. I thought it looked interesting, and I actually would say that I think Miles Morales is a better character than Peter Parker, and I'm not saying that he's necessarily the better Spider-Man, but Miles versus Peter Parker, I think I like Miles more. But yeah, I enjoyed the game. Um, Although there were times where it did feel repetitive, and I kind of just wanted to be done with it. Um, but it didn't feel like DLC to me. It just felt like a short in between game. So you would get to uh, like uh see Miles's story before playing Spider-Man 2. Sort of like you were saying. Um, I guess it is kind of Spider-Man like 1.5. Uh, but it does feel like its own game to me.
Definitely. It was just I've heard it people calling it DLC, which I mean, I played the Spider-Man DLC, all three of them, and I would say the story for all three of them line up about the length of Miles Morales. In which the first game, it isn't very long either. The second one is even shorter. Not as short as Miles, though. That one you can knock out in probably maybe even a day if you really played for that long. I beat it in 9 hours, so I took my time. The bosses were tiny bit hard for me. Combat, I was still getting used to the PS5. I didn't play it a lot, and it was like my first few months of having it. So I was trying to get into it, so it took me a little longer than most people, but it was still short. I don't think the story is as memorable as the first one and the second one. The second one has my favorite story, just because I played it most recent, and I really like Spider-Man 3, and it's just, I won't get into it, but it's just my favorite of the stories, and which story really matters to me. So that's one of the reasons I don't like it as much, is I think the story's not as strong as the other two.
I enjoyed the story. I actually think I liked it better than the first one's story. Um, because it felt like it had a lot of twists, and I thought it had some great characters. I mean, like the Spider-Man games aren't my favorite, but I will say that they do a good job on their characters. So uh, I think that it was the game was done really well. Um, it I don't. It's like it's kind of I wouldn't say it's like sad. No, it's not sad. More like it's it's just a little bit like I was expecting it to be just a short, light little thing. But I would say that it was probably more serious than the first one. I don't really remember the first one that well because I played it a while ago. But um, I do remember that this one was like specifically once you got more like further into the game, it just got more serious and a little bit darker and more intense. And there are parts that I don't quite like about it. Like sometimes it feels repetitive and uh, stuff like that. But other than that, I I think that it just is a good short little game to play if you just need a game to play in between things.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. This is why I love shorter games. You just finish it, you like it, you don't like it, and you remember little parts of it, and then you're done with it. It's not 100-hour story. Red Dead Redemption 2 and Fallout. My bad. Uh, yeah, so it's a nice break in between the longer games. And I'm playing God of War right now, and even I think this is a very long game, and I'm almost done with it. But I am having fun. So I do love the shorter games. You just play it, you like it, do the side content if you really like it, and you're done. You move on to the next one. Because there's thousands of games. Like my backlog is over 200 right now. I need to get through these games pretty fast. And at the time of playing Miles Morales, I didn't have that many in my backlog, but it was still fun to beat it, talk about it with friends, understand it, and I just prefer shorter games for that reason. And this is why I did like it, and I wouldn't have liked it as much if it was like probably 10 more hours. I mean,
Yeah,
you can't tell, but the 10 hours that they could have added to the story could have dragged it on, could have been a lot worse. So I think the time of it is just right, and the Spider-Man games ultimately are games you can complete in a week, or probably less than a week, and
yeah,
like a weekend.
yeah. That's one thing that I think about the games is that they work. Can you hear my dog whining?
Nope.
Oh, okay. They work better as shorter games. I feel like they are they are kind of repetitive. Um, and so if they were longer, like 10 hours longer, or even like 3 hours longer, it would get it would get just really repetitive and tedious and not fun, at least for me. And that's sort of like I know you don't really like Alan Wake, but at least it was short, and maybe if it was a bit shorter, you would have liked it more because you wouldn't really be like
Yeah, I get what you're talking about. Alan Wake was just not my game. I did not like it at all. It might have been the story. The story was like the best part of the game. I mean, I beat it in 6 hours, closer to seven, but I love short games, but this was not my game. I don't think I'll ever go back and play the DLC. I want to play the second one, but just the experience of the first one really ruined it for me, so I might not play it. But I mean, it's really hit or miss. Like for this Miles Morales game, I do think if it was longer, the combat would get stale, really stale. It was like I see how people how like think this that the game is stale, the combat is boring, and it needs to spice it up a little bit, and I get that. But if it's longer, it would probably ruin it, and if it was shorter, it would just be not as much. Like you're wanting more instead of wanting less, which is ultimately better. Which is what happened with Spider-Man 2, is that I think it is just about the length it should be. but it could have been as long as Spider-Man, but then that could have had the story drag out. So it's really just because of the story is why it's so short. And it's not because the combat won't get stale. That's why Alan Wake's so short. And of the story. It really matters of just the story. And the combat could be a second thing or can be a first thing. Like games like Elden Ring, Demon Souls probably, Dark Souls, those are combat heavy games. Lies of P, just those type of games. Bloodborne too. And with those ones, the story isn't the focus. The gameplay is. With games like Miles Morales, Alan Wake, and God of War, it's the story and then the combat. And that's how it is for me always. And I think that's why I don't like Red Dead as much. The story is just, for me, the story's just not hitting like it should be. And the combat isn't my favorite. It, for me, it's a little boring and stale for how long I've played the game. And that's what works best for Alan Wake. Well, not Alan Wake, for Miles Morales. For our Alan Wake episode was we already did that one. You can go listen to that one for my thoughts on Alan Wake, but that's why Miles Morales works so good.
Yeah, I would agree. To be honest, I think that's kind of all I have to say for it. Uh, it's a good game. In some ways, I like it more than the first game. I haven't played the second game yet, so I don't know what I think of that, but I will eventually. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's my long spiel on the shorter games and combat and video games in general.
Um, so what would you rate it?
Mm, So when I added it to IGN playlist, which is kind of like the letterbox for video games, I gave it an 8 out of 10. I do like that one. I do still think I was right, but more thinking it, I want to give it a 7.5. But then again, I remember what I was just talking about and how it works so perfectly. So I think my rating as an 8 still stands. So I would give this an 8 out of 10. This is a must play if you want to play Spider-Man 2. This is a must play for PlayStation fans. And if you own a PS5, this is a must play.
Yeah,
And it's just, you have to play it. Even if
I
you like it or not, you have to play it.
I would also give it an 8. Um, you know, like I said, it did a lot of things well. There were some parts that I think it could have done better. Um, and I thought it had a pretty good story. So, I think that's pretty much it. I've been so we mention at the end of every episode that we have a letterboxed. We both of us have letterboxed accounts. Um, and I've been a fan of the Western genre for a while, but I realized that I haven't actually seen that many Western movies. So I am um I'm on a mission to watch uh watch and rank as many Western movies as I can before the year ends. Uh, so you can, if you want to see that, you can find me on Letterboxd. We always link that in the episode. So if you're interested in seeing my thoughts on a bunch of different westerns, then you could go over there.
And I also have Letterbox that I have my 2024 ranked list. We both do.
Yeah,
Mine has around 20 movies I've and shows I've watched this year.
Yeah, mine has 8. Uh, because some of the things that would be on there, uh, like Fallout, Rise of the Ronin, stuff like that, are not on Letterboxd. But these are the ones that I've seen that are on Letterboxd. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so that is all for this episode of You Underestimate My Podcast. Hope you enjoyed this amazing episode on Miles Morales. Make sure to check us out on YouTube, Letterboxd, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and we have a Gmail. It's You Underestimate My Podcast at Gmail. I don't know if it's in the link tree or not. I would have to fix
I think
that.
yeah.
It's very weird. I don't know what's wrong with it. It's not like a direct link to it, which I don't think it was supposed to. But if you want to email us for any reason, there it is. Preferably if you email us about what movie you want to see on the podcast, what show, video game, book, even, I don't know. And maybe you could ask us what movie you should watch. Because I would say, okay, Yumpers, before this episode ends, we had a new idea, and just basically at the end of each episode, starting with this one, we are going to recommend either a movie, a show, a video game, or a book. Maybe not book as much because I don't read that much, but maybe if it's like Star Wars or Marvel. But we're gonna start doing that, and hopefully watch our recommendations. Maybe tell us in the comments or in a review or in Gmail if you liked what we recommend or if you don't like what we recommend. But for this episode, I would recommend Men in Black. Classic movie. You've probably already seen it. But if you have not, just go watch it. I really loved the first one. Second and third one, alright. But just go watch the first one. Enjoy it. Have a movie night. Just enjoy the film. It's very fun. And I love it. So that's my recommendation for this week.
Cool. My recommendation is a movie called True Grit, which is a Western. I mean, like I said earlier, I'm trying to watch as many Westerns as I can before the year ends, and that was one of the first ones I watched, and I don't want to give my full thoughts on it here, but it's pretty good. Good writing, great acting. Yeah. So
Maybe I'll go watch it.
yeah. So yeah. See you next episode.